Right folks, today we're going to have a chat about Tom and Kate. They came to us for a free review because they wanted clarity on their finances and a real plan for the future. Now Kate was 44, Tom was 47, so just the right age really to be getting serious about retirement planning. Both of them were working long hours, making the best life they could for their little family, but as the long-awaited Christmas break approached, they were starting to muse more and more about retiring as soon as they could. Now Tom said the usual thing to us: we never know how long we've got, do we? Well, that's true. They set their particular goal as retiring when Kate reached 57, when Tom would be 60, which gave us a 12-year timeline. Now, they really wanted to retire earlier than that, but came to us with what they thought was a realistic starting point, which is fine, of course. Our job is to take whatever you feel is acceptable and tell you whether it's possible. For starters, Kate was working as a marketing manager at a tech company, earning £40,000 a year, whilst Tom was head of production at a food manufacturing company, and he was on £66,000. In terms of monthly income, that gave Kate around £2,500 into the bank, and Tom came away with about £3,900. I always think it's really useful to point out what net income people are on, as it helps establish the link between income now and what is needed or wanted in retirement. So in this case, they were bringing in a total of £6,400 net into the household each month, which was pretty healthy. But more of that later. They had two teenage children, 13 and 18. They were expensive teens, as Tom described them, and part of the desire to get some help was to understand how much help they'd be able to give their kids without destroying their own chances of a happy retirement. Now, quite unusually at that age, they owned their house outright, which gave them an extra layer of security. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. When it came to savings and investments, Kate had built up a mix of pensions over the years, 4 historic ones adding up to 120,000. Plus she had £45,000 in a current workplace scheme. On top of that, she had £100,000 stashed away in the Building Society, which was what was left after a generous inheritance from her grandparents. Now, it transpired that the rest of it had been used to pay off the mortgage, if you were wondering. Now, just as an aside, that may not have been our recommendation for that windfall either, had we met them at that point, but that's not for today. We probably have another video on investing versus overpaying on your mortgage or repaying your mortgage. If it's of interest, go and find it. Now, Tom had also been steadily saving too, with 6 historic pensions totaling £145,000, and he had £80,000 in his current workplace pension. He also had a cash ISA with 55 grand in it. So together, they had a really solid foundation of £545,000 that just needed a clear plan to make it work for their future. They were actually saving £1,000 per month into their cash savings as well, because they could. But as we quickly pointed out, they had more than enough cash, so that actually got them interested in what else they should do. Always part of our big picture conversation. Now, before we jump in to see whether Tom and Kate had enough to retire comfortably, and trust me, you'll want to stick around for that reveal, we first need to lay out the assumptions behind the plan. Now, we used a 2% inflation rate in line with the government's long-term target, and yes, I know at the moment it's closer to 4. Before completing our own attitude to risk assessment, their current pension funds were risk rated as balanced, so we used a conservative 4% investment return at outset. Now, these assumptions kept the forecast realistic as opposed to optimistic. Now, if I was a betting man, I expect there are some of you watching this that are questioning these assumptions. We see it all the time, especially in the comments, where people point out years when markets return 10%, or who feel that 2% inflation is a bit of a bonkers assumption. And it's good that these videos get you thinking that way, because that's exactly the conversation we have as we go through these free reviews. Yes, 10% years do happen. In fact, I have just been through my own annual review with my Reeves advice team, because they look after my pension funds for me, and my funds definitely grew by more than my forecast target income in the last year, the last 3 years, and the last 5 years. But of course, markets don't ever move in straight lines. Events like COVID, the Trump slump, wars, elections, all have impact on the markets. It swings and roundabouts. Some years deliver brilliant returns, others do not. So building a plan around the best case scenario might feel really exciting and positive, but it can leave you very vulnerable if things don't go perfectly to plan. So by using sensible, grounded assumptions, Tom and Kate can focus on what's comfortably achievable. It's not about limiting opportunity either. It's about creating a plan that's reliable, flexible, and robust, and keeps their future secure without unnecessary worry. As for what they'll actually need, Tom and Kate had already given this some thought. We're talking about income here. From the time Kate turns 57, they estimated that they'd need £5,750 £1,500 a month between them to live the lifestyle they'd envisioned. That's travel, that's hobbies, and the freedom to really enjoy life. Then from 75 onwards, they expect their spending to ease back a bit to perhaps £4,500 a month, assuming they'll slow down a little and spend more time at home. Now, with the groundwork in place, our team got to work building a detailed cash flow forecast for their current trajectory relative to their goals, and then they presented the results to Tom and Kate, and we're going to present it to you. Here they are. Now, I'm guessing your eyes go straight to that red section on the graph. That's the point where their investments would run out. Specifically, that is when Tom is 72 and Kate is 69. And by the time they reach their 90s, they'd actually have to have found an extra £602,000. That's quite a gap. And some people might shrug and say, well, what if we don't live that long? But the real question is, what if you do? That's the risk that can quietly undo an otherwise brilliant plan. And we see this mistake far too often. People underestimate their longevity and plan only into their 70s and 80s. But with life expectancy increasing, that approach isn't really very sensible. That's why whenever possible, we plan to age 90 and beyond, because peace of mind in retirement comes from knowing that your money will last as long as you will. Now, as well, they do have a house, which is an asset. And of course, they might choose to downsize or bridge a capital and income gap with that. But their plan actually was to spend all of their savings and investments on themselves and leave a house at that value to the bairns. So for Tom and Kate, once they'd got over the initial shock of seeing their plan, we sat down with them and went through their options. And what were they, I hear you ask? Well, we started by reviewing all of Kate and Tom's existing pensions with one clear goal in mind: to see whether consolidating into a modern pension was the right thing for each of them to do. Now, pension consolidation can often simplify things dramatically, and it's typically the first step towards a better plan. But here's the key point. Consolidation isn't always the right answer. Not for everybody and not for every pension. Some older pensions, for example, come with really valuable guarantees or benefits that would be lost if you moved them. Others might have particularly strong performance or very low fees already. That's why it's never a blanket recommendation, and if you do it on your own, be really careful not to overlook some of these factors. It has to be assessed really carefully, both financially and practically, and most importantly, it's got to align with your comfort and your long-term goals. And of course, we're very much talking about defined contribution pensions here. That's personal pensions and SIPs, for example, which are investment based. Defined benefit schemes, or final salary schemes as they're often known, are a different kettle of fish altogether, and we aren't focusing on those today. But if you do have any historic or current DB schemes, it is always vital to understand what these are expected to deliver at their normal retirement age, NRA, or earlier, as that will impact what your investment-based pensions need to do. Now, as always, there'll be videos covering DB versus DC schemes on our channel, so go and check them out. Now, in Kate's case, she had 4 historic pensions and Tom had 6, all scattered across different providers. One of the things that matters here is how each pot was actually performing and whether they were paying unnecessary or hidden charges without realizing it. And of course, if there are any safeguarded benefits too, which makes them diamonds in the rough. Now, in this case, as we often find, the investments themselves were pretty lackluster. Some of the pensions didn't offer a drawdown facility when it came to accessing them, and there weren't any special features or benefits, so we recommended that all of them were consolidated. We also looked at Tom and Kate's attitude to investment risk. The results indicated that their current balanced investment risk level, where we assumed 4% return, didn't fully reflect their personal profile or their time frame of 12 years to RDA. That's retirement day. With the level of other cash they had and strong earnings and no mortgage, they were actually feeling a little bit more confident and a little bit more adventurous. Plus, with our ongoing support, they felt it would be safe enough to push that boat out a wee bit. So we ran a stress test to explore what their plan might look like with an adventurous attitude to risk and an increased assumed rate of return of 5%. Now, this kind of scenario analysis is valuable because it shows the potential effect of small changes on long-term outcomes. It helps understand the trade-offs, the possible benefits of higher returns, alongside the increased exposure to higher market fluctuations. Now, by doing this, Tom and Kate gained a really clear picture of how their plan would perform under different circumstances, giving them confidence that their investment strategy matched both their financial goals and their comfort with risk. We're going to go through the details in detail in just a minute. Next, we're going to go through an option that has tax benefits people don't usually appreciate. As the higher earner in the household and a higher rate taxpayer, we explored whether Tom would be willing to sacrifice part of his salary. He was a little hesitant at first, first, not least because he didn't know what it meant, and of course that's completely understandable. Our explanation was this: look, you're saving £1,000 a month from your net pay anyway. You've got loads of cash already. This will let you get £1,000 into your savings, your pension, without actually having to contribute £1,000. How does that sound? Well, he liked it, and why wouldn't you? So whilst it does look like a reduction in take-home pay, it actually comes with significant tax benefits. So ultimately, Tom decided to sacrifice £16,000 of his salary into his pension. That move didn't just boost his retirement savings, it also reduced his taxable income from £66,000 to £50,000, bringing him into the basic rate tax band. So in practice, this meant he didn't pay any tax at all on £16,000, which went straight into his pension, and he saved a considerable amount in national insurance contributions too, all whilst making his money work harder for his future. How lovely. Now remember Tom's £55,000 cash ISA? Yes, it was safe as houses, but it wasn't really working very hard for them long term. Inflation will quietly erode cash savings over time. That's why we recommended moving it into a stocks and shares ISA. This doesn't just give their money the chance to grow faster, it still keeps all the gains tax free and puts them in a much stronger position to reach their retirement goals. We also looked at what to do with the £100,000 that Kate had in cash, and she started by making a £38,000 600 pension contribution for Tom. The rest of the cash is added to a stocks and shares ISA on a yearly basis to maximise tax allowances until that money runs out. Now generally, unless you've got a specific spend that you're planning, we'd suggest keeping an emergency fund as cash of no more than around 3 months worth of your net income. But it is worth considering longer term benefits for the rest of your money, and we've said stocks and shares ISAs are really good, pension contributions are really good, but always take advice before you make a decision, and particularly before you choose your investment funds, because not all investments were created equal. Well, the final option really that we reviewed with Tom and Kate was their expected retirement income and what they felt they would need to maintain their lifestyle. Now initially they were pretty firm actually that they didn't want to reduce their monthly income. Remember, their original plan was £5,750 a month from 57 to 75. Now after discussing their lifestyle expectations in a bit more detail and how they intended to spend their money and what they were earning now, they actually agreed to adjust their income goal to £5,000 a month. This would still allow them to enjoy all the activities and experiences that they dreamed of whilst improving the sustainability of their plan. Now one other important point that we agreed on was not reducing their income of £4,500 a month from age 75 onwards. This amount provided them with a buffer for essential costs long term, including potential long-term care costs, home maintenance and unexpected expenses, because if you remember, they wanted to keep that house or a similar house at that level, which is going to take some maintenance really. And these are all important things not to overlook when you're retirement planning, but keeping this level of income ensured they had continued security and also flexibility right the way through their retirement. But we can review that every year, of course, when we meet for a deep dive into what continues to be possible in their annual review. So what impact do all these recommendations actually have? Well, as you can see on the screen, the difference is enormous. Their shortfall has completely disappeared. By the time they reach 57, their pension pot is projected to grow from 691,000 to 939,000, a remarkable increase of 248,000. It gives them confidence that their plans are fully on track and that the retirement they want is genuinely achievable. Now this keeps the emotional payoff without overstating certainty and reinforces the idea that the goal is now well within reach, not just slightly closer. Tom and Kate came to us hoping for clarity and a real plan. Now they've got it. Now folks, if you're ready to take control of your future and make sure your money works as hard as you do, please stop dilly-dallying about. Click the link in the description below to learn more about our services and hear from our clients too, and book your free financial review with us today. So what's next? Well, we've done something a little bit different. We recently sat down with some of our advisors and we asked them the questions you've been sending in. They share their best proactive retirement tips straight from the experts. It's packed with insights you won't want to miss. So click here and join us, and I'll see you there.